To continue reading the Handbook for Mankind, the book of the Buddhasa Bhikku. This reading out loud is to learn and improve, enrich reading skill, and to educate the Buddha's teachings via the Buddhasa Bhikku's book titled Handbook for Mankind. Some words I may be reading with unclear pronunciation and corrected straight on it. By the way, I try the best to read out loud based on my self-learning background and my own accent. Let's get started. Page number 26. To continue, suffering and torment. They are inherently unlikable and disenchanting, that they are not self is to say that in no thing whatsoever is there any entity which we might have a right to regard as itself or to call mine. If we grasp at things and cling to things, the result is bound to be suffering. Things are more dangerous than fire because we can at least see a fire blazing away and so don't go too close to it. Whereas all things are a fire we can't see. Consequently, we go about voluntarily. Consequently, we go about voluntarily picking up handfuls of fire, which is invariably painful. The teaching tells us what things are like in terms of the three characteristics. Clearly, Buddhism is simply an organized, practical system designed to show what is what. We have seen that we have to know the nature of things. We also have to know how to practice in order to fit in with the nature of things. There is another teaching in the text, known as the chief of all teachings. It consists of 3 brief points. Avoid evil, do good, purify the mind. This is the principle of the practice, knowing all things as impermanent, worthless, and not our property, and so not worth clinging to, not worth becoming infatuated with. We have to act appropriately and cautiously with respect to them, and that is to avoid evil. It implies not to break with accepted moral standards, and to give up excessive craving and attachment. On the other hand, one is to do good, good as has come to be understood by wise people. These two are simply stages in morality. The third, which tells us to make the mind completely pure of every kind of contaminating element, is straight Buddhism. It tells us to make the man free, as long as the mind is not yet free from domination by things. It cannot be a clean, pure mind. Mental freedom must come from the most profound knowledge of the what is what. As long as one lacks this knowledge, one is bound to go on mindlessly liking or disliking things in one way or another. As long as one cannot remain unmoved by things, one can hardly be called free. Basically, we human beings are subject to just two kinds of emotional states, liking and disliking, which correspond to pleasant and unpleasant mental feeling. We fall slaves to our moods and have no real freedom simply because we don't know the true nature of moods or what is what. Liking has the characteristic of seizing on things and taking them over. Disliking has the characteristic of pushing things away and getting rid of them. As long as these two kinds of emotional states exist, the mind is not yet free. As long as it is still carelessly liking and disliking this, that, and the other, there is no way it can be purified and free from the tyranny of things. For this very reason, this highest teaching of Buddhism condemns grasping and clinging to things attractive and repulsive, ultimately condemning even attachment to good and evil. When the mind has been purified of these two emotional reactions, it will become independent of things. Other religions would have us simply avoid evil and grasp at goodness. They have us grasp at and become attached to goodness, even including the epitome of goodness, namely God. Buddhism goes much further, condemning attachment to anything at all. This attachment to godness is right practice at the intermediate level, but it just can't take us to the high level no matter what we do. At the lowest level, we avoid evil. At the intermediate level, we do our utmost to do good. While at the highest level, we make the mind float high above the denomination of both good and evil. The condition of attachment to the fruits of goodness is not yet complete liberation from suffering, because while an evil person suffers in a way befitting evil persons, a good person suffers also in a way befitting good persons. Being good, one experiences the kind of suffering appropriate to good human beings. Good celestial being experiences the suffering appropriate to celestial beings, and even a god or Brahma experiences the suffering appropriate to gods. But complete freedom from all suffering will come only when one has broken free and transcended even that which we call goodness to become an Aryan. One who has transcended the worldly condition and ultimately to become a fully perfected individual and arahant. Now, as we have seen, Buddhism is the teaching of the Buddha, the enlightened one, and the Buddhist is one who practices according to the teaching of the enlightened one. With regard to what was he enlightened, he simply knew the nature of all things. Buddhism, then, is the teaching that tells us the truth about what things are really like, or what is what. It is up to us to practice until we have come to know that truth for ourselves. We may be sure that once that perfect knowledge has been attained, craving will be completely destroyed by it, because ignorance will cease to be in the very same moment that knowledge arises. Every aspect of Buddhist practice is designed to bring knowledge. Your whole purpose in setting your mind on the way of practice that will penetrate to Buddha Dhamma is simply to gain knowledge. Only do let it be right knowledge. Knowledge attained through clear insight, not worldly knowledge. Partial knowledge, halfway knowledge, which, for example, clumsily mistakes bad for good, and the sort of suffering for a sort of happiness. Do try your utmost to look at things in terms of suffering, and so come to know gradually, step by step. Knowledge so gained will be Buddhist knowledge based on sound Buddhist principles. Studying by this method, even a woodcutter without book learning will be able to penetrate to the essence of Buddhism, while a religious scholar with several degrees who is completely absorbed in studying the Tipitaka but doesn't look at things from this point of view may not penetrate the teaching at all. Those of us who have some intelligence should be capable of investigating and examining things and coming to know their true nature. Each thing we come across, we must study in order to understand clearly its true nature. And we must understand the nature and the sort of the suffering which produces and which sets us alight and justice, S-C-O-R-C-S, S-C-O-R-C-S. Scorched us, young Gillian, to establish mindfulness, to watch and wait, to examine in the manner described the suffering that comes to one. This is very best way to penetrate to Buddha Dhamma. It is infinitely better than learning it from the Tipitaka. Busily studying Dhamma in the Tipitaka from the linguistic or literary viewpoint is no way to come to know the true nature of things. Of course, the Tipitaka is full of explanations as to the nature of things, but the trouble is that people listen to it in the manner of parrots or talking minor birds, repeating later what they have been able to memorize. They themselves are incapable of penetrating to the true nature of things. If instead they would do some introspection and discover for themselves the facts of mental life, find out firsthand the properties of the mental definings of suffering, of nature, in other words, of all the things in which they are involved. they would then be able to penetrate to the real Buddha Dhamma. Though a person may never have seen or even heard of the Tipitaka, he carries out detailed investigation every time suffering arises and scorches his mind. He can be said to be studying the Tipitaka directly and far more correctly than people actually in the process of reading it. This may be just caressing the books of the Tipitaka every day without having any knowledge of the immortal Dhamma. The teaching contained within them. Likewise, we have ourselves, we make use of ourselves, we train ourselves, and we do things connected with ourselves every day without knowing anything about ourselves, without being able to handle adequately problems concerning ourselves. We are still very definitely subject to suffering, and craving is still present to produce more and more suffering every day, and we grow older, or simply because we don't know ourselves. We still don't know the mental life we live. To get to know the Tipitaka and the profound things hidden within it is most difficult. Let us rather set about studying Buddha Dhamma by getting to know our own true nature. Let us get to know all the things which make up this very body and mind. Let us learn from this life which spinning on in the cycle of desiring, acting on the desires, and reaping the results of the action, which then nourish the will to desire again, and so on over and over, incessantly. Life which is uplit to go spinning on in the cycle of samsara. The sea of suffering purely and simply because of ignorance as to the true nature of things or what is what. Summing up, Buddhism is an organized, practical system designed to reveal to us the what is what. Once we have seen things as they really are, we no longer need anyone to teach or guide us. We can carry on practicing by ก็ดูซีน practice ใช่ไหมถ้าตัวเองต้องเป็น practice ก็เช็ค practice เหมือนกัน practicing by ourselves. One progresses along the Aryan path. Just as rapidly as one eliminates the defilements and gives up inappropriate action, ultimately one will attain to the best thing possible for a human being, what we call the fruit of the path, nirvana, nibbana. This one can do by oneself, simply by means of coming to know the ultimate sense of the what is what. 3 universal characteristics. 3. We shall now discuss in detail the 3 characteristics common to all things, namely impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, suffering, and non-selfhood. All things whatsoever have the property of changing incessantly. They are unstable. All things whatsoever have the characteristic of unsatisfactoriness. Seeing them evokes disillusionment and disenchantment in anyone having clear insight into their nature. Nothing whatsoever is such that we are justified in regarding it as mine. To our normally imperfect vision, things appear as selves, but as soon as our vision becomes clear, unobscured and accurate, we realize that there is no self-entity present in any of them. These 3 characteristics were the aspect of the teaching which the Buddha stressed more than any other. The entire teaching, when summed up, amounts simply to insight into impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-selfhood. Sometimes they are mentioned explicitly. Sometimes they are expressed in other terms, but fundamentally they aim at demonstrating the same single truth. The impermanence of all things had been taught before the time of the Buddha, but it had not been expounded as profoundly as it was by the Buddha. Unsatisfactoriness, likewise, had been taught, but not in its full depth. It had not been treated from the point of view of causation, and no directions had been given as to how it could be thoroughly and completely done away with. Earlier teachers had not understood its true nature as did the Buddha in his enlightenment. As for non-selfhood in the ultimate sense, this is taught only in Buddhism. This doctrine tells us that a person who has complete understanding of the what is what, or the nature of things, will know that nothing whatsoever is a self or belongs to a self. This was taught only by the Buddha, who truly had a complete and thorough understanding of the what is what, or the true nature of things. The ways of practice decide to bring about insight in these three characteristics are numerous, but one single noteworthy fact is bound to be revealed once that perfect insight has been attained, namely the fact that nothing is worth grasping at or clinging to. There is nothing that we should want to get, to have, to be. In short, nothing is worth getting, nothing is worth being. Only when one has come to perceive that having anything or being anything is a delusion, a deception, a mirage, and that nothing at all is worth getting or worth being, has one achieved true insight into impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-selfhood. A man may have been reciting the formula anicca, aniccang dukkhaṃ anattā, morning and evening hundreds and thousands of times, and yet not be able to perceive this characteristic. It is just not in their nature to be perceptible through hearing or reciting. Now, intuitive insight, or what we call seeing Dhamma, is not by any means the same thing as rational thinking. One will never come to see Dhamma by means of rational thinking. Intuitive insight can be gained only by means of true inner realization. For instance, suppose we are examining a situation where we have thoughtlessly become quite wrapped up in something which later caused us suffering. If on looking closely at the actual cause of events, we become genuinely fed up, disillusioned and disenchanted with that things, we can be said to have seen Dhamma. or to have gained clear insight. This clear insight may develop in time until it is perfected and has the power to bring liberation from all things. If a person recites aloud anicca dukkha anatta or examines these characteristics day and night without ever becoming disenchanted with things, without ever losing the desire to get things or to be something, or the desire to cling to things, that person has not yet attained to insight. In short, then insight into impermanence and satisfactoriness and non-selfhood amounts to realizing that nothing is worth getting or worth being. There is a word in Buddhism that covers this completely. The word sunyata, the word sunyata or emptiness. Emptiness of selfhood, emptiness of any essence that we might have a right to cling to with all our might as being mind. Observation, which leads to the insight that all things are devoid of any essence that is worth clinging to, is the real core of the religion. It is the key to Buddhist practice. When we have come to know clearly the everything of every kind of devoid of selfhood, we can be said to know Buddha Dhamma in its entirety. The single phrase, empty of self, sums up the words impermanent, anicca, unsatisfactory, dukkha, and not self, anatta. Not self,ไม่มีตัวตน When something is perpetually changing, devoid of any permanent and changing element, it can also be said to be empty. When it is seen to be overflowing with the property of inducing disillusionment, it can be described as empty of any entity that we might have a right to cling to. And when we discover on examination that it possesses no stable component whatever that could be self, that it is simply nature, changing and fluctuating in accordance with the laws of nature, which we have no right to call a self. Then it can be described as empty of self. As soon as any individual has come to perceive the emptiness of things, there arises in him the realization that it is not worth getting or being any of those things. This feeling of not desiring to get or to be has the power or protect one. From falling slave to the defilements or to any kind of emotional involvement. Once an individual has attained this condition, he is thenceforth incapable of any unwholesome state of mind. He does not become carried away by or involved in anything. He does not become in any way attracted or seduced by anything. His mind knows permanent liberty and independence, and is free from suffering. The statement, "Nothing is worth getting or being," is to be understood in a rather spiritual sense. The words "get" and "be" refer here to getting and being with a deluded mind. With a mind that grasps and clings to wholly and entirely. It is not suggested that one could live without having or being anything at all. Normally, there are certain things one can't do without. One is property, children, wife, garden, fuel, and so on. One is to be good. One can't help being a winner or a loser, or having some status or other. One can't help being something or other. Why then are we taught to regard things as not worth getting or being? The answer is this: the concepts of getting and being are purely relative. They are worldly ideas based on ignorance, speaking in terms of pure reality or absolute truth. We cannot get or be anything at all. And why? Simply because for the person who is to do the getting and the things that is to be got are impermanent, unsatisfactory, suffering, and nobody's property. But an individual who doesn't perceive this will naturally think, "I am getting, I have, I am." We automatically think in these terms, and it is this very concept of getting and being that is the source of distress and misery. Getting and being represent a form of desire, namely, the desire not to let the thing that one is in the process of getting or being disappear or slip away. Suffering arises from desire to have and desire to be. In short, from desire, and desire arises from failure to realize that all things are inherently undesirable. The false idea that things are desirable is present as an instinct right from babyhood and is the cause of desire. Consequent on the desire there come about results of one sort or another, which may or may not accord, may not accord with the desire. If desired result is obtained, there will arise a still greater desire. If the desired result is not obtained, there is bound to follow a struggling and striving until one way or another it is obtained. Keeping this up results in the vicious circle action, karma, action, karma, action, กรรมการกระทำคือกรรมkarma result action result which is known as the view of samsara. Now it's word samsara is not to be taken as referent and as referring to an endless cycle of one physical existing after another. In point of fact, it refers to a vicious circle of three events: desire action in keeping with the desired effect resulting from that action, inability to stop desiring, having to desire once more action, once again another effect, further augmenting of desire, and so on endlessly. Buddha called this the view of samsara. The view ofอ่านภาษาไทยคร่าวๆจำไม่ได้ชื่ออ่านว่าอะไรสังสารวัฏ The view of สังสารวัฏ samsara ภาษา because it is an endless cycling samsara คือสังสารวัฏ